Chapter 13. Step Up and Step Out. You've already taken some action, but now you're building up your self-love. It's time to look at really stepping up, achieving what you want in life. A very important part of self-love is taking action. It's in consistently behaving in a way that says that you are enough. It usually means pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. To be honest, probably the biggest gains you'll ever experience in the self-worth stakes will come when you push yourself out of that comfort zone. In Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, Susan Jeffers wrote, "The doing it comes before the feeling better about yourself." If you've been afraid to do things in the past, afraid to have the conversation, afraid to make that phone call, afraid to ask your boss for a rise, and you've been afraid because deep down you felt that you were not enough, then taking action will boost your feelings of self-worth. But the action comes first. You'll probably still be scared. Chances are you will be. Everyone gets scared, even the people who do the most posturing and talking to themselves up. Most of the time, they're doing that to build up their feelings about themselves because they're just as scared as you are. Many people want to build until they read enough books, been to enough seminars, watched enough interviews and documentaries, grown enough and had the magical or enlightened insight that takes all the fear away. Then it will be easy. That could happen, but not in the way that they think. Overcoming fear doesn't happen by reading books or going to seminars, nor does it happen by sitting at home waiting for the world to come to us. It happens when we step out into the world, when we show ourselves as we are. It happens when we step up and step out and say, "Here I am, world." When we do that, we tell the world, the universe, whatever you want to call it, that we're ready. And when we've done it once, guess what? We do it again and again and again. It's consistent action that wires in a sense of being enough. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Self-love gym. Remember your courage. Here's a little exercise to help you to have the courage to step up and step out. Think back to some times in the past when you were afraid of doing something, but did it anyway. What did you do? And what was the outcome? How did you feel afterwards? Did it make you feel better about yourself? Write it all down. For example, I had a fear of public speaking, but I pushed myself to do it, and now I really enjoy it. For you, it might be a time when you were afraid to ask a person on a date or for a dance, or it might have been a risk you took in business, or it might have been that you were afraid to buy your house. Even if it did pan out the way you wanted, you can still include it as an example of having the courage to do it anyway. I met a guy once who was a talented computer programmer. He was a lovely person and had ideas and dreams that could have morphed into a technology company that could have made a difference to people's lives. Inside, though he believed he wasn't enough, he looked at Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs with great admiration. But he imagined that they had all the know-how that he didn't. He didn't know that they'd started with nothing and had no idea how they were going to realize their dreams. It's the thought that other people have something you don't. That's the problem. It infers that you are not enough, and it prevents you from acting on your hopes and dreams. My dream was to be a teacher, covering topics that inspired me. And in 1999, I attended an Unleash the Power Within seminar led by Tony Robbins. One of Tony's big teachings was the importance of taking action, especially massive action. So I took massive action. I went back to work the next day and resigned from my job. Okay, I didn't quite think it through, but I'm glad I didn't. I had to work a 3-month notice period, and I enjoyed that time. I felt free. There was a complete absence of stress in my mind. I was pumped up, dreaming about what I was going to do with my life. I dreamt of writing books, giving talks and leading workshops that would help people to heal and feel good about themselves. Exactly what I do now. I remember waking up with an early start one morning, about halfway into my notice period, in a sudden panic about what I'd done. I'd resigned from a very good job to be a writer and public speaker. What? First, I'd never been a good writer. It had taken me 2 attempts to pass my English exam at high school. I was also terrified of speaking in front of people. What had I been thinking? Sometimes, though, action requires not thinking things through too much. The more we think things through, the more likely we are to come up with the reasons why our plans won't work or become fixated on the problems that might arise. They will arise, and in fact, because of our feelings of not being enough. People who live from I am enough rarely think things through. They have a dream and they know that somehow they can make it happen. Some of us aren't so sure though. A few months after I felt that job, I was in the habit of sitting in a little coffee shop in the West End of Glasgow, drinking coffee and reading books. At the same time, I was reading the Conversations with God series written by Neil Donald Walsh. I was also listening to a lot of Wayne Dyer audios in my car. But even though I'd left my job to do what they were doing, when I really thought about it, it seemed above my station. I dreamed of doing it. Damn, I'd left my job to do it. But now I was hardly doing anything to move myself in that direction because deep down, I believed that I was not enough. It wasn't a conscious belief, more an assumption that coloured my thinking and inhibited meaningful action. Without meaning to, I was comparing myself to Neil and Wayne. I loved what they were doing. Their words moved me and inspired me in ways that I'd never felt before. And that was actually part of the problem. I imagined that anyone who came into contact with Neil or Wayne would have their life changed in about 5 minutes. Such was the wisdom in their words. But I didn't seem to be good at helping people with their problems at all. I had friends who were just as screwed up now as they had been from the previous 5 years. And if I was anything of an influence at all, surely they'd been healed by now. Surely I'd be healed by now. Also, I lacked confidence, despite talking myself up and riding on the whole having had the courage to leave my job thing. I knew it. Neil and Wayne were obviously super confident. Neil and Wayne were also complete, healed, perfect. But I wasn't. I didn't think all this consciously. It was just an assumption about my own worth that led me to imagine there was such a huge gap between me and my heroes, and in my most private moments to believe in my own deficiencies. Self-worth lies deep inside. It's a very intimate thing. It's there in our most private thoughts and feelings. It becomes visible in the comparisons that we make between ourselves and other people. I'm sharing my own experience because I've learnt that it's much more common than you might think. Everyone compares themselves to others in some way and finds themselves lacking. It might be down to how clever the other people are, how confident and how much money they have, how many resources, how pretty or thin they are, how free of cellulite, how whole. Everyone perceives a gap between themselves and others, but that gap prevents action. In truth, there is no gap. It is artificial. The only place it exists inside of our own minds. Also, as I expect you'll remember, we never really know what's going on in someone else's mind. In all likelihood, the people we're comparing ourselves to have identical fears to us and identical insecurities about their own worth, no matter what they might be doing in the world. We're all human after all. I once worked alongside a girl who was beautiful. Everyone thought so. Other girls felt insecure around her. They compared themselves to her and felt that they were not enough. They saw her as confident. They wished that men would flirt with them as much as they had with her. What they didn't know was that she was just as insecure as they were. The reason she went to such lengths to make herself look attractive was because she felt so insecure. Where everybody else saw beauty, she saw only deficiency, something that needed to be improved upon. She felt that she was not enough. There was no gap between how that girl felt and how the others felt. What about you? Do you think that there's a gap between you and other people? Is there a gap that prevents you from claiming your worth, from stepping into the world and saying, you know what, I am enough? Once you remove the gap from your mind, insights come, perceptions change, action is taken, and everything changes. Self-love gym. Removing the gap. The mind works in symbolic ways. If you perceive there to be a gap between where you are now and where others are, doing things you love to do or being things you love to be, imagine building a bridge across it. Make it a nice bridge. Perhaps you've met on the bridge by people or even angels who help you cross. Make it a nice sunny day. Do it as a meditation. Put on some nice music and create a nice setting around yourself. The symbolic bridging of the gap and having help to cross will help you feel better in yourself and more confident that you can get to where you want to go. Often, there are many things that we could do to improve our life, but we don't do them because it never occurs to us that we can. If our root assumption is that we're not enough, we'll assume that other people have skills, confidence, and self-belief that we don't. We may put others' success down to money or position. We won't have those either. But great things aren't often achieved by people who started with nothing, and holding back is almost always down to a feeling of not enough. If you're holding back because of a perceived gap between yourself and others, another way to remove the gap is to start to think of things others do and figure out how you could do them better. It helps reduce the fear of taking action and also helps you to realize that you can realize your dreams. Self-love gym. Doing it better. What are others doing that you could be doing too? How could you do it better than the other people? What improvements can you identify? Choose 3 things and take at least one action step towards each one in the next 48 hours. For example, if others are running online courses and you would like to be doing that too, you could sign up for one of the courses to see how it's done. Or you could talk to someone about getting started. As we learned earlier, being authentic creates connections. It's important, then, in stepping up and out into the world, that we interact with people as often as we can in an authentic way. It will help our confidence and also with our self-worth. When we lack self-worth, we usually lose confidence and actually shrink away from people. We may make excuses not to interact with them, and we may put them down and attempt to elevate ourselves above them. Of course, we're only fixing on their deficiencies as a way of plugging our own self-worth deficit. When we feel good about ourselves, connection is normal. In a state of enough, there are no blocks to connection. Turning that around, if we go out and connect, we will start to feel enough. So make a point of interacting with people. Shop assistants, waiters, policemen, even the people who issue parking tickets. If you're not used to it, now's the time to get used to it and get good at it. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. It will help you. Even if it feels strange, embarrassing, almost, just push through it. Take an interest in people and take every opportunity to be kind. Kindness opens hearts. It facilitates vulnerability. It dissolves shame. It shows you for who you really are. It shows that you are enough. And do you know why this is? It's because you are. In stepping up and out into this world, we find that fear goes away and we can live in happiness and joy. Except that isn't quite the way that it works. Fear doesn't disappear, especially if we continue to challenge us and stretch ourselves. Part of the difficulty a lot of people have with stepping up and out is that they want the fear to go away. Part of the attraction of books about enlightenment, and I know this from personal experience, is the hope that through becoming enlightened, we can banish fear. But what if we could just change our relationship with it? What if we could just accept it instead? That would mean we'd be more at peace with it. We'd get more used to it and it would lose its grip on us. We need to make this shift because it's in my experience, fear never goes away as long as we're consciously stepping up and stepping out. And if we can live with that and expect it, the magic is that fear becomes a friend, something to be expected, welcomed even, because it tells us that we're about to do what matters to us. So embrace the fear, step up and out and leave your comfort zone behind. That's a very important part of self-love. It's not self-love that gets you out of there. Getting out of there brings you self-love. Self-love often lies just at the edge of your comfort zone. And when you step up and out, reflect on the fact that you had the courage and confidence to do it. Don't focus on the problems you've overcome. Focus on how you got through those problems. Focus on what that says about who you are. This is what I call putting in the I am. Confidence comes from I have done, but self-love comes from I am. So when you're building up self-love, put in the I am. For example, I face a fear means I am courageous. I stood up to this person means I am learning to stand up for myself. I spoke publicly means I'm becoming more confident. Bringing your acts of courage and confidence back to yourself in this way will remind you that you are a courageous and confident person. It will help you face other difficulties and challenges with a sense of meaning, seeing them as opportunities to grow and to develop self-love. In summary, action is a hugely important part of self-love. We are always taking action, whether we realize it or not. It's important to act in a way that says, I am enough. Often this involves stepping out of our comfort zone, but happiness, fulfillment, and connection usually lie just beyond it. To reach them, we need to face our fears, but that needn't be something to be afraid of. We can learn to change our relationship to fear by accepting that the goal isn't to get rid of fear, but to accept its presence. That's when fear transforms into a friend.